Good afternoon and welcome to the News Roundup for Wednesday, December 10, 2025. I'm Bill Thomas, and here's what's happening right now. Ilhan Omar accused of treason after the Congresswoman calls President Trump a national embarrassment following 47's inflammatory rally in Pennsylvania. Governor Tim Walz doubling down, vowing to welcome even more Somalis into Minnesota as lawmakers on Capitol Hill press him to turn over concealed information regarding that state's SNAP program. And a shocking new report from the Pentagon making a dire prediction concerning the outcome of a potential war with Communist China. Also, why a surprising win in a key Florida election could spell trouble for the GOP. And after winning a prestigious honor, Hollywood superstar Leonardo DiCaprio finally reveals why he always covers his face in public. All this and much more coming up right now on the Big Roundup. We have a great deal to get to today, and we begin with Democratic Representative Ilhan Omar, who's now getting up on her high horse and firing back in a big way, and this following President Trump's barrage of incendiary remarks concerning both Somali immigrants as well as the Minnesota congressperson herself. As you well know, Omar has been at the center of a $1 billion welfare fraud scandal, which is plaguing the Somali community in her Minneapolis district, and the president now calling her out for it, directly. At his recent affordability rally in Pennsylvania, 47 mocking Omar, mercilessly ridiculing her name and attire, falsely claiming that she married her own brother, and even accusing her of being here in the U.S. illegally, all before encouraging the crowd to chant repeatedly, "Send her back." Additionally, the president took direct aim at her country of origin, calling Somalia a filthy, crime-riddled hellhole, and doubling down on earlier remarks where he referred to Somalis as garbage who should be kicked out of America. Just a bit over the top there, Chief. Omar is now responding by saying that Trump is so obsessed with her in a weird way that he needs serious help. She also accuses 47 of falling back on a number of bigoted lies in order to obscure the fact that he has no legitimate economic policy, and she goes on to say that he continues to be a national embarrassment to our entire country. Well, bless her confused heart. Billionaire Elon Musk, that guy, is now weighing in on the dispute as well, suggesting that Omar may actually be guilty of treason. Points to a series of controversial remarks the Congresswoman made last year, during which she promised to protect the interests of Somalia by working inside the U.S. system. At that time, some lawmakers called for her immediate resignation, saying she violated her oath of office by prioritizing her native country over the people of Minnesota. I'll tell you, this should be brutally alarming to you. If you have any thoughts on it, drop us a comment. We want to know what you're thinking. Now, on the other hand, Senator Bernie Sanders, has a completely different view. He says that when demagogues like Trump are in trouble, they resort to racism and hatred. That this time it's being directed at Omar and the Somali community, and that the entire affair is simply un-American. Well, you're in trouble when Bernie Sanders has to come to your rescue. That's bottom of the barrel stuff. A final thought, and this is the News Roundup Lowdown. Here's how it all pans out. Minneapolis, we feel your pain. The ill one doesn't really believe the President of the United States is obsessed with her, and this is just her way of deflecting attention away from her failure to perform well her duties as a congresswoman representing Minnesota. Here's the bottom line. Her district, Minneapolis and the surrounding area, has a sizable problem with illegal immigrants, and it's reported that some of those individuals have, in fact, criminal records. This has led to ICE operations, arrests, and even deportations. Now, some salt on the wound. Over the past several days, we spent some time briefing you on reports concerning a great deal of financial fraud going down in the ill one's district. She's caught the attention of all Minnesotans, people all over the country as well, even me, and 47 himself. Now, to be fair, President Trump has made some less than flattering remarks about Omar, and perhaps he could ratchet back the rhetoric just a pinch. But here's the real deal. She is an ineffective leader. We all want to know what her involvement is regarding fraud investigations going on in her state and her backyard. And for now, she can either keep beating up on the boss or simply hunker down and do her job. Oh, yeah, and a side note, as you know, the ill one, Ilhan Omar, complains from time to time about the wealthy not paying their fair share in taxes. Therefore, for a number of folks who've left us comments here talking about her and her hubby having up to $30 million in their little Wells Fargo checking account, we hope they're going to be paying their fair share. And Producer Dave, I got to ask you, 30 million clams in the bank. Call me wacky, but that sounds mildly peculiar for a government employee.
Well, look, apparently most of that cash comes from the business dealings of her third husband, who happens to be a venture capitalist. And, in my opinion, all venture capitalists are immediately questionable.
Yeah, they got tons and tons of dough. Absolutely. She's bad for her district, though. That's the bottom line. She's bad for her district, the state, and in my humble estimation, she's bad for the entire country. All right, we'll stick with Minnesota just a bit longer and shift our focus now to the other guy, that one, Governor Tim Walz, who seems to be digging a deeper hole for himself every time he opens his mouth. Pipe down, Timmy. Now at a Democratic fundraiser in Seattle, Walz now claiming that his state's Somali residents are being demonized, promising to defend his immigrant neighbors at all costs, and vowing to open the floodgates and bring as many of them as possible into Minnesota. Now there's a great American leader for you. Who voted for that guy? Walz admits that right now his political opponents are getting the better of him by making him angry, causing him to be petty, and bringing out the worst in him. Don't blame somebody else. That's on you, brother. He goes on to say that helping people in the Somali community and welcoming them into his state is the best response to what's going on, and warns that critics of Democrats, they should never mistake his kindness for weakness. Well, actually, it's not the kindness and it's not weakness. It's just dumb. Additionally, Walz claims that Minnesota already has per capita more refugees than any other state, that federal authorities are terrorizing them by plucking them off the streets, and that fortunately, ICE agents from Texas who were sent north to do the job, they were a bit too cold to get out of their cars. And that's what he says anyway. In the meantime, Walz, he's busy holding courts in the Pacific Northwest. A number of federal lawmakers now demanding that he complies with a recent request by the Trump administration to provide his state's SNAP data to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They say his refusal to do so, further evidence of his gross negligence as governor, that he's playing political games, and that his failure to comply, that jeopardizes food security for nearly 500,000 Minnesotans. Step up, do your gig. Closer to home, Walz, he's still facing extreme pressure for his failure to stop the massive fraud scandal linked to his state's Somali community, and it just keeps getting worse. Yeah, check it out. Police in Minnesota now claim that while the state's Democratic leaders let hundreds of millions of dollars just slip away like that from right under their noses, law enforcement throughout the state was left completely hanging out to dry, threatening public safety for everyone. Final thought. There's a lot to take in here. This is the News Roundup Lowdown. And once again, a false narrative and a low-rent attempt aimed at dodging responsibility for failed leadership by the now legendary Timmy I Know Nothing Walz. I feel bad for asking, but I got to do it. Editor Pranov, the magnificent Cut 34, please.
I know nothing. Nothing.
Yeah, he knows nothing. For clarification, people from all over the planet, they're welcome to come to the USA, but there's a little-known thing called protocol. There's paperwork to fill out, phone calls to make, visits to arrange, and a process which foreigners have to go through to become legal residents. That happens all over the world, by the way, not just right here at home. Now, when people from basically anywhere on the planet come here illegally and make a nuisance of themselves, that's where things get a little dicey. As the guy in charge, Terrible Timmy, some complicated issues that he needs to tend to right away. Post haste, they say. Brother Walz, your state smack dab in the middle of a monumental $1 billion fraud case with dozens of indictments, people arrested, trials conducted, lengthy prison sentences handed down, and more. But you, sir, you know nothing. You have an out-of-control illegal immigrant issue concerning people from Somalia, and your answer to crime, fraud, corruption, illegal immigration, and more is to promise to bring more Somalis into your state. What are we missing? It's like a firefighter trying to extinguish a house fire and promising the homeowner that he's now going to pour a bucket of gas on the roof of the house. Producer David, this all sounds like a goofy Will Ferrell comedy. You can't make this up. And what do you make of this guy?
It's more like a tragedy, Bill. Unfortunately, it just seems to be getting worse and worse for Walz. And despite any good intentions he might have, he just can't seem to bury the mounting problems which his administration is facing.
Yeah, like they say in theater, comedy, tragedy. This guy is just delusional. He's in over his head. Last I checked, state governors, fact check me, Davey, state governors, they can be impeached. Just a note to our pals in Minnesota. But pay no attention to this guy, your News Roundup host. I'm just kind of thinking out loud. It's just too much to believe. Turning our attention now to the alarming conclusions of a top-secret Pentagon report, which analyzes the potential outcomes of a war between America and China. According to the Defense Department, if the communist regime launches a military invasion of Taiwan and the U.S. decides to intervene, there's an extreme likelihood that we'll end up losing that fight. The classified report uses information gleaned from war games to play out a number of different wartime scenarios, and it warns that right now, Communist China already has the ability to destroy our most advanced weapons, and even predicts that our Navy's best aircraft carrier would not be capable of surviving a Chinese attack. Goes on to point out that the communist regime, they've been stockpiling hundreds of advanced hypersonic weapons, which are extremely difficult to intercept, and that China, they currently have the capability to knock our critical recon and communications satellites right out of the sky. Well, we have capabilities as well, man. Additionally, the report says that both China and Russia are now developing cutting-edge weapons at a much faster rate than we are, and that moving forward, we're going to be facing significant threats from cyber warfare, biochemical agents, artificial intelligence as well. Final thought, and this is the News Roundup Lowdown. Don't believe everything you hear. And the USA is kind of like my Los Angeles Dodgers. Losing is not an option. Also, just for clarification, when the Dodgers win the World Series next year, that's going to make it, at my last count, 3 in a row. Trifecta, three-peat. David, do they call that a hat trick by chance?
Not really, Bill. It's more like a three-peat.
It's a three-peat. Okay, 3 in a row and all back-to-back. Now back to China's communist regime. First up, while 47 is holding down the fort, China simply will not move on Taiwan. And provided the Republicans keep the White House in 2028, and I think we will, China, likewise, they're going to stand down. They'll continue to flex their adorable little muscles just like that and talk good talk. But end of the day, nothing's going to happen. The math. Yeah, China has hypersonic weapons, but I checked. We do too. They can attempt to destroy our machines, and while they might make a couple of direct hits, we're simply going to strike back and strike back harder. It'd be less than a fair contest, and the last thing China should ever bargain for is any type of military conflict which involves the U.S. Also, don't be misled. China has a larger Navy, absolutely, but we have a superior one. And our Navy, combined with our other armed forces, in my estimation, would prove formidable if a battle were to ensue with Xi Jinping's overpaid thugs. I think I know your take on this, Producer Davey, but what the heck? Tell me your thoughts on China going into battle with us, the USA.
Well, Bill, look, if our military is worried, then I'd be a little bit worried. We're going to be fighting in China's front yard, and they'd have home field advantage. But the good news is I think we probably have a few tricks up our sleeve.
I think we do, and I don't think they're up our sleeve. I think they're right out in the open. That's why China has held back on taking Taiwan. They know what we're up to. They know what we're able to do. China is a massive territory. This is really bizarre to threaten anybody with what could turn into global chaos for the sole purpose of taking that very small island, that island nation of Taiwan. That's just the epitome of ridiculous. All right, a couple of additional headlines we are keeping a very close watch on here in the News Roundup newsroom. And first up in Florida, Democrat Eileen Higgins soundly beating a Trump-endorsed Republican and winning the race to become the next mayor of Miami. Well, that victory ending her party's nearly 3-decade-long losing streak in the city. I don't like it, but it is a bit of an accomplishment. The Pentagon now teaming up with Google and launching a new AI platform for the U.S. military. War Secretary Pete Hegseth saying that partnering with the world's best technology, that'll make our nation's elite fighting force more lethal than ever before. Keep that in mind, China. And turning now to the subject of money, a new inequality report revealing that just 0.001% of the world's population, that's fewer than 60,000 people, now controls 3 times as much wealth as the entire bottom half of humanity combined. Tough. They earned it. They worked for it. They can keep it. Now to the world of business and a quick peek at a couple of stories which are right now raising eyebrows on that street and that street, Wall Street and Main Street, and everywhere in between. We follow these things very carefully. Leading things off, Paramount Skydance revealing that popular Chinese gaming and social media company Tencent Holdings recently called off its attempt to buy Warner Brothers Discovery, and all in order to avoid going through a potential national security investigation. Those things are rough to go through. Now we'll take to the skies. The CEO of Airbus says that in the near future, commercial aircraft manufacturers are likely to stop using traditional designs and instead begin making thick-winged passenger jets. And they look a bit like the B-2 stealth bomber, if we have a shot of that. I saw the pictures a bit earlier. And I like it. Fly first class on a pretend bomber. That'd be fun. And moving along, the Trump administration reaching an agreement to end former President Joe Biden's controversial Save Student Loan Plan. And if approved by the courts, the move slams the door shut once and for all on the Biden administration's questionable student loan forgiveness policies. You make a loan, you pay it back. And now, a quick gander at a bit of rock and roll showbiz news. And we'll kick things off today with a Titanic victory for one of Tinseltown's most eligible bachelors. Time, as in Time magazine, but I don't think they have a magazine anymore. Just call themselves Time. Time has just named megastar Leonardo DiCaprio as their Entertainer of the Year, and the shy Hollywood heartthrob celebrating by revealing why he always seems to hide his face when he's out in public. 51-year-old says that ever since he became a household name thanks to Titanic, he's had a tough time juggling his fame with privacy. Goes on to say that he thinks the best way to stick around for a long career, disappear as much as you can, unless you got something important to say. And as a result, he rarely goes out in public without wearing a hat and a mask. I dig movie stars wanting their privacy. And the one way to ensure privacy is to get in the motion picture business, appear in all the big movies, and then paint the town on Friday nights with all the young, pretty starlets. Now, Editor Pranav. Pranav the Magnificent. Can we see a shot of that fine young man, please? No, not that one. Do the other one where it's all covered up because we recognize his privacy. He wants to remain kind of low profile and incognito. We like their privacy. He likes his privacy. But just for the heck of it, Pranav, one more without the face mask and without the hat. As a handsome character. And more now from the silver screen and a legendary director who says Hollywood made him an offer he simply couldn't refuse, and that creating an all-time classic ultimately wound up ruining his entire career. Yeah, that guy, Francis Ford Coppola, is getting on in years, but he's still a talented guy. Says that making The Godfather in the early 1970s was such an awful experience that he gets sick even thinking about it. I kind of get what he's saying. The Godfather's success, ruined his career. I also seem to recall Bill Gates saying that the success of that software program, Microsoft Word, ruined his career too. Mike Tyson said knocking all those people out in the first round ruined his career. And even Ray Kroc, the old McDonald's guy, says all those Big Macs, ruined his career as well. Yeah, it all makes sense. And on the music scene, a surprise reunion has joyous fans dancing in the aisles. Original singer, rock star Lou Gramm returning to Hall of Fame rock group Foreigner for a number of East Coast concerts throughout December, all month long. 75-year-old crooner going to be joining his former bandmates on stage as they bang their heads and toss what's left of their hair around and crank out a bunch of tunes from their classic album, Foreigner 4. That was a good one. It was great to hear that the boys are hitting the stage once again with their original lead singer, Lou Gramm. He's the real deal. They hit big in the 70s with Cold as Ice, bigger in the 80s with a number of huge hits. They're still rocking the planet, and he has battled tons of health issues over the years. But at his core, Davey, Lou Gramm, a New York boy, is one of the best American foreigners on the planet. See what I did there, Davey? American foreigner?
Well done, Bill. Very well done.
Pretty well done. And now time for us to call it a wrap on the Tuesday edition. Is it Tuesday or is it Wednesday? I think it's the Wednesday edition of the Big News Roundup. The week is screaming by. Hey, before we go, as we do each and every day here on the program, we share with you a very notable quote. And these thought-provoking words come to us today from a guy called Teddy Roosevelt, who once upon a time said, "We can have no 50-50 allegiance in this country. Either a man is an American and nothing else, or he's not an American at all." By the way, Tim Walz, who watches this program, Tim Walz and Ilhan Omar, we chose that quote quite randomly. Nothing personal, nothing at all. Roosevelt, by the way, was our nation's 26th president, serving from 1901 to 1909. And on this date, in 1906, he became the first American to win the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts to end the fighting between Russia and Japan. And now time for us to bust on out. But before we go, don't forget the News Roundup program. Ask not what your podcast can do for you. Ask what you can do for your podcast. And all we ask you to do is hit that subscribe button right there. That's going to wrap it up for us. We're going to fade to black, dim those lights, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow afternoon.